Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the February 4th meeting of the Urban Village Development Commission. A couple of quick things before we get started. First of all, I want to wish my mother a happy birthday. She's the one person watching us tonight, or the one of a million, I'm not sure. Secondly, one in a million, yes. Secondly, I want to say, go Hawks. Yeah? Say it? Come on, a little better than that. Hawks! Thank you. They won the Super Bowl this weekend, in case anybody wasn't paying attention. And thirdly, before we really get into official business, I would like to ask our friend Nina, who's been with us on the commission for quite some time now and has recently bailed on us because of her wonderful swearing in at the City Council last night. So, Nina, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Is this on? It is on. Thank you. I was just programmed to come here tonight, so I wanted to come here tonight. It wasn't, applying for the City Council wasn't to leave the Urban Village Development Commission. I was just weighing the work and seeing how much work Lucy had lined up for us this year. I thought maybe perhaps the City Council would be less. I wanted to come tonight because I wanted to thank all of you. I don't know if I've served with a body as long as I've served with this commission, almost 8 years or around 8 years, and it's been a very rewarding experience. This is the smartest bunch in the city. I've been so lucky to come in and work in an intellectually and regulatorily challenging setting and do some good for the city of Issaquah. And so that said, you guys are all smart, excellent. I'm looking forward to seeing what I could have been doing with you this year. But I want to thank each of you individually because you're all unique to me. And if Jeff would give me another minute, I'm going around the house. Tim, you're new, but you didn't go without notice. And I want to say how you've always helped me, steady me. I appreciate your thoughtful diligence and the way that you frame things and take time to say something that really means something. I'm really glad that you're on the commission. I'm going to miss you. Eric. Yeah, you're the same as all these other guys, smart as a whip, really put these applicants to the task, but you've got the heart. You've got the heart and soul, and you always make me feel like I'm doing something valuable here. Thank you very much for inspiring me. Chug. Now, you know, if I'm sleeping over here, I might miss one of your jokes, and it's your jokes that keep me on my toes. I call you the punster when I'm being nice. Thank you. Chantal, you just got here and now I'm leaving. So I wanted to serve with you on something. We'll have something else to do. And I think we have a Scrabble game scheduled for next week. So I won't miss you too long. Scott, you're the neighbor I never see. Where are you? So now I'm going to make a personal vow to see you in the hood. I've enjoyed having you next to me. You are the fresh ideas. Whenever stuff is going around, it's Scott who comes up and says something like, hey, this is looking forward. And I've really appreciated that from you because I never had any of those ideas. Carl, I wanted to call you my left arm or my left hand, but I don't think that's how the saying goes. But you're like that. You're a great buffer between me and this other guy on the end.
Hooligan, I believe, is the word you're
looking for. But you're such a leader, and I don't know how you do this and the Economic Vitality Commission at the same time. Yeah, it's amazing, the service that you provide and the years that you've had here from the beginning, from moving to Issaquah Highlands and coming onto the service of this commission. You've done so much for this community and for the city of Issaquah. And you continue to do, and that's going to be a great year for both these commissions for you. Jeff.
Time's up.
Jeff, I met you at the interview for this commission. I remember that, and you intimidated me. I thought, oh, crap, for one thing, I'm never going to get picked for this thing. These guys are tough. And the other is this is going to be hard work because Jeff said so. And it was. It's been a great challenge. And you have managed this group so well. And what I have appreciated from you, besides all of your thoughtful work and your detailed analysis of everything that comes to this commission and your engagement of all the participants in this, and those from the audience, your tenacity, in a good way, Jeff, in a good way, has not just helped Issaquah Highlands, though I know you're very proud of our home urban village. It helps all of Issaquah, and you do it from the bottom of your heart. There is no other motive, and it's admirable and honorable, and I will miss you a great deal. And I want to thank you for taking me under your wing on this commission.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And nice, kind words for everybody. And I appreciate that. I know I appreciate that. I'm sure you guys do, too. We're going to miss you here. You've been great on the commission at every turn, and a great partner for all of us, for the city as well. And now you're going to just continue your good work
I'll give it
with
a try.
the city council. So don't forget about us. I just have one question.
What?
Who gets the bonus points if the word Woonerf is played in the Scrabble game?
Yeah. Woohoo! I'm saving that one. There's some points on that,
All
definitely.
right.
Thank
Thanks
you.
very much.
Thank you, Lucy. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, so I guess official business now, calling the meeting officially to order. I guess commission membership is the first item on the agenda. Is this something you were going to talk about, or am I going to talk about it?
No, I just wanted to remind the commission that the application period actually has been, or not remind you, but let you know that the application period has been extended to February 14th. So, and for the viewing public, anyone who would like to apply, you can go to the city's website and apply online. And any of the alternates who are interested in becoming regular members, that's not their term, not mine, please feel free to apply. And we have 2 open spots right now. So we'll be hiring a lot of people at that high salary.
Great.
Doubling the salary.
Yes, I believe that's right.
Okay, thanks. So,
Lucy, quick question on that. Are you able to verify that you've received our applications or anything?
I know Jim asked me about that, and I checked. I'd have to send an. I mean, I haven't gotten a list, so I don't know.
Okay.
you only get an email if you're being considered, so perhaps.
I probably didn't get mine in that case. Thank you.
No. So I would encourage, I would encourage all of you to reapply if you are if your term is up, and for those of you that are alternates, I would encourage you to apply for those regular roles. And anybody else of the 1,000,001 that are watching tonight,
Including your mom.
including my mother, she's now retired, so she has time. Please apply for this really great commission. Thanks. Okay, so. Moving on to the minutes from January 22nd. I was not here, but I did watch the entire video, and I have a couple of comments on the minutes, but wanted to see what everybody else has.
Michael, I don't know whether any of you saw that. He had an edit. Okay. We have a printout of it if you
Oh, I
want to
didn't
just
see
read
that.
it into the record. Thank you. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
You can play Mike. This evening, Michael Beard is played by Jeff Walker.
Okay. Let's see. So on page 9, middle of the page, where it says Beard asked, it says Beard stated that as long as we keep demanding we fund bicycle lanes and paved walking trails, we will not be able to afford funding for metro and buses. He would like to add that to the minute. Okay. Do you have this in writing, by the way? Okay. Do I need to read all this? I suppose I do, huh? And in the paragraph below on page 9, please add to Bellevue College's main campus has a park and ride adjacent to the campus, and UW Bothell is a school with live-in students, so they do not drive as much to class. Also, he'd like to note that during the presentation it was stated that students are already trying to avoid the fee at Bellevue campus by parking their vehicles in the park and ride instead. Leads me, Michael, to think that parking will be constrained and the planned fee structure would push students to utilize the fee parking at Central Park. It's really more. That's really more of a
That's a
comment
not
for
a-
later. So we'll
Right.
we'll review that again later. Meantime, is there anything else for the minutes?
I had something on page 10.
Okay.
It's in the middle, the second Keybert's paragraph. The last line says, Keybert said the roadways for accessing the campus are not residential. I think the word was actually roadway, and maybe if we could change it to Central Park Drive is not residential.
You get that? Okay. Cool. Anything else? Okay, so I have on page 6, under Sloman, second paragraph under Sloman, says, she noted that all buildings are proposed. Couple lines below that it says, in order to keep other areas free from heavy vehicular traffic, I think it's free, not tree. And then there were 2 sections here where, under condition 13, where Lee asked about the bus loop, and it says the applicant will speak to that in their presentation. I watched the presentation, and I didn't really get much on the loop. I read through all the meeting notes and everything, and I don't know that we really talked about metro access on the loop, so if we could address that later, that would be great. And then there was another one about Mr. Dawson speaking to the projected enrollment at full build-out and how many cars will be forecast. We did get some information on traffic studies, but again, I didn't really get a lot of information. I don't know if we covered that enough, but I assume we'll probably talk about traffic again today. Let's see here. And then the last thing I had, it's not a change, and I'll bring it up when we get into discussion. So, all right, anything else on the meeting minutes? Okay, let's go ahead and take a vote to, or let's get a motion, please.
Excuse me, I move we adopt the meeting minutes from 22 January 2014
As amended?
as amended. Thank you.
Okay. Motion and seconded, moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passed, thank you. All right, let's move on to Bellevue College discussion, continued discussion. We will have public comment this evening rather, so we'll get to that in a bit. If you're interested in speaking at some point, if you could put your name on the clipboard up there, that'd be great. Okay, so Lucy, do you want to start us off?
Yep. So you're reviewing a site development permit, which is a land use permit for Bellevue College. You are the decision makers. You are the decision makers. And so this is a quasi-judicial hearing, and because I just went back through training, I'm going to be more official tonight, and I'm going to read you 3 questions, and it's just an opportunity to make sure that you'll be fair and impartial. So I'm going to just read those 3 as one big group and give you an opportunity to all say yay or nay as a group. So does the decision maker have a reasonable, impartial attitude toward the request? Is the decision maker free from any direct or indirect financial benefit that would result from approving or denying the request? If ex parte contacts have occurred, have they been revealed at the public hearing? So the first one is, do you have an impartial attitude?
Yes.
Yes.
Are you free from any direct or indirect financial benefit?
Yes.
And have there been any ex parte contacts? And if so, could you please reveal them? You could actually speak them. You don't need to show them.
Yeah. No.
Okay, great. Does anyone object? Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you. So staff presentation now?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we're going to do this a little differently than we have in the past. We're going to do we're going to go through the memo the way we normally do, but instead of going all the way through the memo and then returning to the applicant, we're going to do it together, kind of the way the memo is structured. We just thought it'd be more efficient. And I just realized I need to pull up maps. Are you going to come join me? Or am I talking out of the other side? Okay. So this evening, we've sent you a memo. There were 18 questions that we identified. Dan Dawson of Bellevue College, Lucy Sloman for the city. The first edit, or the first question, was a question regarding the use of et cetera in condition number 7. And we removed that and just indicated that it would be other options consistent with the development agreement.
As I'm playing Michael tonight, I think that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Issue number 2 was in condition 15, and predominantly it was to clarify how the potential parking in the BPA would be counted relative to the maximum allowed parking. So we clarified in the condition by, first of all, we just wanted to clarify that by code meant, excess, parking in excess of the code allowed maximum for that phase. That was one edit. And then we added the sentence at the end that says potential parking within the BPA, though off-site, will be included in any calculation of maximum allowed parking for any phase or total build-out if and when it is allowed. The one thing I wanted to note, and it was in the memo, was that potentially if the parking is shared between say the city parks and the college, there might be some consideration of not counting it to the maximum, but that would be in consideration at that time. That's not something we're asking for now.
And would that be more of a percentage or a ratio or something as opposed to absolute numbers?
In terms of shared parking?
Yeah, so in other words, if it's shared, then you assume that there's a percentage of those spots being used as opposed to all or none?
Potentially, or it might be that we wouldn't count it towards the maximum for the college if that made sense in the overall parking picture. We just, at this point, shared parking isn't a part of the development agreement, so at the time that they wanted to do this, we would have to take that under consideration. So we just don't know exactly how that might play into the total parking picture.
Okay.
So condition, item number 3 was conditions 12 and 17, and there was a question about whether there was a conflict between those two conditions. And in looking at them, staff felt that there was maybe some overlap between them, but not a conflict. That condition 12 was requiring approval of the property owners or easement holders to use the land for the parking, whereas condition 17 was clarifying that all the college's parking had to be on their property until such time as the BPA parking was allowed. Did that make sense, Carl?
Yeah, I was looking at it, it's just sort of netting down. It's like it's bonus if it comes to, otherwise it's not part of the calculation.
Exactly. Item number 4 had to do with condition 24 and a concern that
Lucy, I'm sorry. I would have asked this, I think, if I was in the meeting last time, but I don't remember hearing any discussion about park users actually using Bellevue College parking spots, let's say on a busy soccer weekend or something. Was there any discussion on that? And when, yeah, so I don't know what's the policy for something like that. I know I've been to Bellevue College many times and have parked there for events or whatever, but has anybody talked about that at all?
well, I think, so let me just say this piece. There's going to be a conversation that's going to go on between the city and the BPA and Bellevue College at some point in the future. And I think that, the city sees some opportunities for that, but that would be a separate agreement.
Right. When we decided to propose locating parking in the BPA right-of-way, part of the reason for that was to make it a shared use facility with parks. We see a lot of potential benefits to both Bellevue College and Issaquah Parks in trying to be partners in stuff like that, and maybe down the road development of a joint facility or something like that as well. So for the most part, the peak demand for parking would be not when it's peak demand for college parking. So we see that as a balance and a benefit to both.
Thanks. That's the way I see it too. And you're referring to both the college parking and the BPA, correct? Or just the BPA area? Because that's really what I'm asking, I guess, is assuming whether BPA existed or not, the parking there, reciprocal parking on Bellevue College land just in general.
Mm-hmm. You know, we talked about having some of probably the parking, freestanding parking garage or the open lot next to it as being another place where it might be desirable to share parking with the parks. I think that would be something that I think Bellevue College would be willing to do if the capacity was there to do it. And it would be more a process of looking at, how the parking is utilized and that sort of thing. I think for the BPA parking, those are probably from a college's, a student or faculty staff perspective, the least desirable parking spaces because they're going to be the farthest away. So anyway, I think the possibility exists.
So number 24 had to do with the required screening along parking lots and whether there was going to be potentially conflict or safety issue with sight lines for cars coming in and out of parking lots. And in considering this, I think the first thing to say is that the city takes safety really seriously. And if the strict application of a condition interfered with some kind of safety element like these sight lines, we would, reduce it. And we do that kind of thing whenever we're reviewing construction permits. We're balancing a number of factors while applying the condition. I think our perspective is that we do not need to add that wording to the condition because that kind of review would take place anyway. It doesn't mean that it has to come up to the very edge of, say, a drive. Okay. Next question was about fill heights. Why is this development different than other development agreements? With each development agreement, there's an environmental review and there's a proposal, and through that process, a fill limit is established, and the fill limit that was established and sort of codified in the development agreement is the mitigated determination of non-significance, called the MD&S condition number 7, which you can see in your memo and on screen. There are also guidelines which encourage, concentrating development and retaining trees. So at some point in the future, if a spot fill is necessary to allow development on a portion of the site, and that maybe exceeds the 12 feet by some amount, we would consider that in trying to balance those two things. But at this point, we have a conceptual grading plan based on estimated grades. I mean, it's at this level of work, it's the appropriate level of information. But until we have more concrete information on what will actually happen on site, we're not ready to say what's proposed is or is not okay.
So, not my area of expertise, but are these absolute numbers, or is it like an average of 12 feet?
Well, I think that's the thing that we would, it doesn't say average, and I'm not sure that we would apply it as an average, but if there was a small area, it seems like that's meeting the intent of the condition. So I think that's the determination. That's why we're not giving a specific ruling on it at this point until we see what the extent of it is with the final grading plan.
Okay. Are you guys okay with that? Yeah. Thanks.
Structured versus surface parking. There were a bunch of questions. Why is so much area allocated for structured parking? Why not put all the parking into structures? Excuse me. When will the garage be built? Will there be all surface parking in early phases? What about subsequent phases? So while the development agreement encourages structured parking wherever possible, It doesn't regulate a specific ratio or require that it be all structured. The proposal has 10% surface parking, which the diagram below shows the sort of orange color of these buildings. These are either garages or under-building parking. So it's all, those are structured, and these two gray squares indicate the two surface parking lots. The guideline also says that it should be located in the least visible part of the site. So we feel that the proposal has met the intent of the development agreement.
Lucy, one comment. I would just agree with the first four bullets, the last one about the least visible part of the site. I think if those two surface lots were to the west, wouldn't they be less visible from the Central Park and other areas?
Well, that's the question I have, is least visible from where?
So they won't be visible from Central Park because of, this is,
there's a band.
this is a band of 100-foot trees
Okay.
along there. So, you know, they might be visible if the road, if that Central
I
Park
didn't realize
spur
how
road.
far, I was,
Yeah.
that's why I was looking for how far it came down. I was
Yeah.
looking for some reference point. Thank you.
Is it necessary for us to say least visible from somewhere? Because it could be the most visible from a building on the campus or from something else. So I'm not sure what the relevant spot is that we're referring to.
Right, okay. I think that the language in the, and reduce the visual impact of surface parking. So I think we felt it meant the intent, but I agree that, so that wording of the last bullet is probably not very accurate relative to the guideline. No, we want a clear record, and I appreciate you paying attention. Do you have anything you want to add, Dan,
On parking?
on this?
On this particular
Yeah.
element? Well, I don't want to belabor anything, but we would interpret that, the way the condition is written, to mean that it's least visible from off-site.
I think that's fine. I don't have an issue with it. I just think we need to clarify it because 25 years from now, other than me, no one else will be on this commission, so.
And
Let the record reflect.
if you clarified it that way, we wouldn't have.
Well, I mean, I
objection
don't
to
think we have to I think we've clarified it through this discussion, and I'm sure Susan will capture it in the minutes.
That takes care of it.
That's fine, as long as it's clarified.
Okay.
Cool with that, thanks.
Required parking, there were, at the presentation last time, you may remember that Bellevue College talked about some of the parking studies that they've used. From the city's perspective, the basis for how much parking is provided is based on the square footage and regulations within the development agreement. So looking at the square footage, there's a maximum allowed parking and a minimum allowed parking. They fall about in the middle of the range. The parking studies would not be used by the city to determine if it's the right amount unless they were asking for some kind of modification. So it might be useful at some point to the city, but not at this point in the review of the permit. However, the applicant may feel different.
There was a couple of comments that were made in the review of the minutes about the parking studies and the comparison. We used parking study that Bellevue College did, and then a parking study that was done for the University of Washington Bothell Cascadia Community College Bothell campus. It's accurate that the Bellevue College enjoys pretty good bus service because they're next to the park and ride facility, and there is also at least one. Actually, is there more than one route through campus, Ray? So anyway, they have bus service through campus as well. The residential consideration at Bothell is not, I don't think is really a consideration because they have about 250 units and they have a targeted full-time equivalent student population up there of 10,000 students. So, and I think they're at 4,000 or 5,000 now. So I think, but again, they also have better transit service than the Issaquah Bellevue College site will have when it starts. As a result, we're proposing to provide more, excuse me, parking than the number of spaces that we've proposed for the build-out condition, to provide a higher percentage of those in the early phases of development, so that we can then go back and study parking and see how heavily it's utilized and that sort of thing, and make adjustments. Our goal, we proposed 1,320 stalls at build-out. Our goal would be to produce less, because we would like more people to get there other than in single occupant vehicles. But we also need to be realistic about, initially anyway, about the likely, we won't have real good transit service. So we want to be more conservative and provide a higher ratio of parking early and then watch it as it goes. Our philosophy at this point, however, is not to try to encourage carpooling and transit use by charging a fee on campus, because our concern would be that we would drive vehicles off campus and into neighborhoods in the parks where we don't want them.
Can I don't know if this directly pertains to what we're talking about right here, but I remember actually it was Eric who had a real concern. That way, if this is bad, it's blamed on you. Northeast Falls Drive. And the traffic studies that were done said that the biggest impact would be on Park Drive and 15th and the Issaquah Falls City Road and Highlands Drive, I think it was. I'm still concerned about that Northeast Falls Drive and how traffic might impact that area, since it's residential. Bless you.
Can we wait till we get to that question, just because I have a map I'd like to use?
Sure.
Or you can imagine, if you will.
Actually, it would be great if we can table that, because I think there would be more of a discussion on that, if that's okay with you. And then we can see the maps and have that conversation. Yeah.
I think
Thanks.
it's coming up here.
It's real close.
So number 8 had to do with single occupancy vehicles, called SOVs. What are the college's plans for SOV trip reduction? What's the likelihood of transit to the site? How can you encourage everyone not to drive by themselves? What are the incentives to get people out of their cars? What are the alternatives to single occupancy vehicles? I think the beginning thing to say is that everyone agrees we want to reduce the single occupant vehicle trips. Question is how. There is a limit on the number of PM peak, afternoon peak trips, and if they exceed that, then certain actions have to be taken. Also, as the last 2 bullets show, there are state and local laws on commute trip reduction and transportation management plans, which may be triggered by the campus, and those would also require certain actions to be taken. In the interim, there are non-motorized routes that we talk a little bit more about in the next couple of questions. The college is doing certain actions. I'll let them speak to that. There's a collaboration between many parties to try and get metro service. As you may remember, Swedish Development Agreement included some funds that the city, if they were able to expand or enhance service to the Swedish site, that would come into play, and there may be the ability for the college to put in funds and or leverage, participate in leveraging those funds. They have the ability, but not the requirement, to provide a shuttle from the facility that was built as part of the Issaquah Highlands Park and Ride. So there are many different things that could happen, but those are things that they will have, they and the city and other people, other parties in Issaquah Highlands will have to work together to see what is possible, because at this point it's, up to a certain point, it's optional. Can we let Dan?
The college will provide incentives for people to not drive their cars to campus. You know, it's probably not realistic to think that a whole lot of people would take the bus to the Issaquah Highlands Park and Ride and then go from there to campus by foot or by bike. Although I have to say that if you'd asked me when we started this process if there were any pedestrians on College Drive up a 15% grade, I would have said no. But every time I've been out there, I've been surprised at how many people I see walking out there. So it's not unbelievable. The college has a program now where they provide they subsidize Orca cards. They also provide ride matching services for people that want to carpool. They keep a pool of those. They also provide preferential parking locations for carpools. So those are some of the incentives. But, you know, we don't have much in the way of transit to use as an incentive at this point. The college is very interested in being part of a kind of a critical mass up there that helps to convince Metro that they should, or Sound Transit, well, it'd be Metro for a local route, to provide some sort of a local service up there. But when we did meet with Metro, when we were planning the site, and they were not very encouraging to us.
So I realize that this is what you are required to be doing, and that stops there. But what hit me when we were talking at the last meeting, when somebody mentioned that the target, the student body target was running start for the next few years, that you were going to start with running start and then build up to different age groups or categories. Thinking of 16-year-olds driving to go to, to having to drive to get an education, which to me sounded really disturbing. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why 16-year-olds shouldn't be driving, safety being the biggest one, but cost is, and kids don't drive as much as they used to. I think I was just looking at some statistics that says that 30% of kids don't have driver's license anymore. So there's an equity issue as well as an environmental issue, and there's a whole host of issues related to building a campus geared toward, at this point, 16 to whatever, 20-some-year-old, and not building into the process the right way to get to it without depending on cars. I feel particularly, I take that personally because I was forced to get a car for my son when he was 16 so he could go to Bellevue Community College because he didn't have good math classes in his high school, and the only way for him to get good science and math was to drive. And even though that went against my principles to have a 16-year-old driving. So I really urge you to be looking at any possible ways where the shuttle seems to be a good approach, whatever you can do to get kids from the park and ride or, directly into the campus. I mean, I think it's in these days and age when kids are driving less, when they're starting to recognize that there's life away from cars, forcing them to drive to get an education seems like not the right path to be on.
Okay.
So, number 9. The comments were about designing the trail from the amphitheater to the King County Trail for both bikes and pedestrians. Because this would be the best way in, given the steeper grades of College Drive, and that because there was some topography in this trail connection, that pedestrians and bikes should be separated for safety reasons, and that the trail should be paved. So just to orient you to this map, this line, this slightly heavier line is the existing King County Trail, and this somewhat slimmer red line is the proposed trail from the amphitheater down to the King County. We agree with the commission's comments. We had discussed that multi-purpose would be one of the options, but we didn't specify it, and we agree that this trail really has to be for both bikes and pedestrians because it's likely to be the primary bike route into the site. There is a variety of ranges of widths, and given the likely demand, we think that this trail should be a minimum of 12 feet wide and potentially larger. And because of the steep grades and switchbacks, we think that there are certain actions that need to be taken to help both pedestrians and bicycle users be aware of each other. This would include striping, signage, and potentially in some segments separating the pedestrians and the bicycles so that they're more likely to see each other. And lastly, a multi-purpose trail in this kind of location is required to be paved with a hard surface, so either concrete or asphalt. So in response to all of that, we added a new condition, number 28, which reads, the proposed trail between the amphitheater and the King County Trail shall be designed as a multi-purpose trail with a minimum 12-foot width. The design of the trail shall incorporate elements to improve the safety for all types of users, especially where grades are steep, above 8%, and switchbacks are used, including separate bike and pedestrian sections, signage, pavement striping, or other means. This trail should be provided with Phase 1, but not later than the last certificate of occupancy in Phase 2. This timing can be adjusted if phasing is modified from what is shown in the application, recognizing that the trail is essential for non-motorized connections to the campus.
Go ahead, Carl. We have a bunch of questions, so we'll start with Carl.
Lucy, a couple questions on that. Do we have an example or reference point for a 12-foot trail around Issaquah Highlands? I don't think even the one that wraps around Swedish Hospital isn't 12 feet, is it?
I would guess that was 12 feet. It might be 10. I believe the King County Trail may very well be, it's either 12 or 14 feet wide.
Okay. And secondly, is there any lighting proposed for that trail?
One of my questions.
I think if you wanted to encourage bicycle
Yeah.
use to, another location, lighting would be necessary there.
Yeah,
Well,
particularly with the nature of the type of timing and continued education and stuff like that. Yeah.
So
For all those people who wear really bright reflective clothes to be seen by cyclists at night.
right. I'm just trying to look, we made that sort of lighting section towards the end that consolidated all of the sort of guidelines, goals, and conditions. So on page 34 of your staff report, which I'm going to read to you just in case you don't have it right at your fingertips, goal number 4.3 says minimize the lighting impacts of the built environment on the natural environment. Careful site planning and landscaping as well as lighting standards will ensure lighting provides for public safety, is a community amenity while impacts are held to a minimum. Trails and parks through open space areas will use minimal, if any, lighting.
That's not very encouraging.
No, it's not.
Yeah, I think that absolutely need to be considered in this case.
Yeah, and I think there's ways that you can look into doing that wouldn't be uplighting and, a lot of spill or leakage,
path
but
lighting.
something to light the path to make it safe for people.
So there's a guideline that says provide trail lighting for safety where necessary without adversely affecting the surrounding uses. So I think that's good. Provide pedestrian scale lighting along walkways. So I think, because lighting was not a part of this plan, there was a broader lighting condition. And what I'm going to do is just look at it and see if there's any, while Dan speaks to him, and see if there's any expansion.
Right. Right, okay.
And I'm sorry we didn't catch it before. I just think it's one of those things, if you're in the interest of safety and in the interest of making an attractive use, for some of the other concerns that we have, I think it's really important to consider.
We had not proposed any lighting for the trail in the planning that we put together. I guess, a concern that I would have is I wouldn't think, I'm not sure what I would want to do personally. I wouldn't want it to appear attractive to some people when it's maybe not as safe as they would think. I don't want it to be like a crosswalk. You paint a crosswalk in a street and then people think that they're protected from vehicles and they don't need to be safe in their crossing. Well, I'd be concerned about a lighted trail unless it was lighted pretty intensely, simply because, there's parts of that trail that'll be in a really remote location, not close to anything. So the element of personal safety, I guess, is what I would worry about.
Yeah, but
So let me just add two pieces. One is the condition 27, Jerry pointed out, includes a statement, cutoff fixtures shall be used and lighting shall be located in areas where drivers, bicyclists, and pedestrians are likely to be. So I think that gives us the opportunity to talk about how this is going to work. However, the King County Trail is not lit at this time.
Oh.
So, we may be able, thank you, Jerry, to provide lighting for the portion that Bellevue College is providing down to the trail, but I'm not sure that we're asking them to light that whole trail.
yeah, I think this is a bit of a tough one. It's kind of a no-brainer that you should have good lighting there, but it's a bit of a tough one overall just because it's, is it incumbent on them to make that happen or King County or what? But if we do, in fact, think we're going through all this trouble to make this incredible trail there, and we do think it's going to be, a good path to get to and from there, we really need to consider that. And then on top of that, it's just, it's not even about late at night or anything. It's, this time of day in the winter, it's 6 o'clock, 5:30, it's dark, and 4:30, yeah, people are going to and from.
So I think one thing to say is the good news is that if you're leaving the campus, which is what you're more likely to be doing after 4:30, that is downhill. So you could, if you wanted to have a lit route, go to College Drive and take the bike, and there are bike lanes down College Drive and Falls Drive down to the park and ride or into the town center.
And sidewalks as well.
Right.
I just want to add, as far as the reference to King County Trail, so you have two different uses and purposes. This trail is going to be, students going to college, to and from college, where the King County Trail, one wouldn't expect like at night necessarily to be using that trail so I think there's a difference there. And it does look like that trail comes out closer to the end of the other King County Trail. But I have a concern, not just bicycle traffic, but just students walking on their own without any lighting out there. That could be a concern for safety.
All right, I have a couple of comments on this condition, though. My understanding is that the amphitheater is a proposed amphitheater and not an absolute. Is that true?
Well, there would be some, why don't you speak to this?
Well, you could say that about a number of things. There's a desire to have it, but I'm sure you're aware that community colleges and colleges in general, higher education, money is really a tight thing. So it could be. I don't know when it would be built, I guess is.
Well, let me say why I asked that question is because whether or not it happens is, it'd be great if it did, but I understand it might not. I just think the condition shouldn't necessarily be tied to the amphitheater and be proposed amphitheater or something else that, indicates that if the amphitheater doesn't go there, there's something else so that we know what location we're talking about.
So I think that's only meant to identify which trail we're talking about, and not that it only is there if the amphitheater
No,
is there.
I understand that. I'm just saying if the amphitheater isn't there, then there is no trail between something that doesn't exist and King County. So I'm just saying identify.
The trail connects the developed part of Bellevue College with the King County Trail.
I think
And so it just would connect
You
at a
understand
different
what I'm saying? It's
location.
just wording. It's
the
just,
central part of campus or something
yeah.
like that.
So we're on the same page. I just think the wording needs to be more clear. And then the other part is, and again, this was me watching the video and maybe not understanding it clearly, we talk about phasing in this, phase 1 and phase 2, and I've seen this a couple of times in the briefing responses, which I understand, but are we actually identifying the build out as phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, or we're looking at building numbers as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? Do we actually have a true phasing that we can tie this to?
So that's one of the questions that comes up later, but I mean, I think it's easy to speak to it now, that right now the proposal is those numbers on the buildings represent phases. It could change, which is, I think, why we're saying that the timing can be adjusted if the phasing is adjusted, not to meet a different intent, but because they might choose to build the buildings in a different order.
Right,
I
and
think Ray was saying last time, he intimated that was the order. but
Right.
If they needed a life sciences building that made sense to build down here at the southern part, that might be the first.
right, so that's why I bring up the question is if we build 1, but then they decide to build 3 instead of before 2, for example, phase 2, does that become, does building 3 become phase 2?
Yeah.
Okay, I just hadn't seen a clear delineation of the phases, or at least an understanding of those phases, so that's all I'm asking.
The buildings are labeled 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, and 3A, 3B, implying that that's how the phasing would go. But to the way I think, the first construction effort would be phase 1,
Mhm.
and then the next thing that happened would be phase 2, whether it's building 2A or 2B, or the example was the building 3B up here. So, anyway.
Yeah, no, I understand that, and again, I'm not criticizing in any way or anything, I'm just trying to understand, because I didn't see phase 1 equals phase B, phase 2 equals, I just saw building numbers and assumptive, timing or order of those things, and so if we're referring to phases, we should probably identify phases, or if we're talking about buildings, we should identify buildings, or whatever it is, so just clarity. Tim, you had a question?
I noticed this last time that there was no connection drawn between the King County Trail and that upper surface parking. Is that intentional, or is that
So
would that be looked at as an alternate means of access?
So this is on the west side. The next one is going to be on the east side. So maybe if we're looking at that map, I can answer your question just to make sure I'm understanding. Because I think it's a good question to make sure we understand how the pieces on each side connect. Are there any more questions on this one? Okay, let me go to that one then. So on the east side, there were questions about what happens if the Central Park Spur Road isn't built, because right now we don't know if that's going to be possible. And in the application, there was this trail which we've highlighted. I've added the yellow to highlight it, but this trail was shown. And we've added a new condition, number 29, which I can read in a second. But the point of that is to ensure that this pedestrian connection out to the King County Trail to the east happens, whether the road happens or not. We just wanted to be really clear that that didn't disappear if the road couldn't be constructed. So that new condition reads, the trail connecting the east side of the campus to the King County Trail shall be provided as a multi-purpose trail whether or not the Central Park Spur Road is built. This trail should be provided with Phase 1, but not later than the last certificate of occupancy in Phase 2. This timing can be adjusted if phasing is modified from what is shown in the application, recognizing that the trail is important for non-motorized connections to the campus. So, Tim, if I'm understanding your question, the parking lot would be just off the edge of this slide?
Well, I'm thinking about the parking next to Building 3B.
This
Because
part-
the trail is quite proximate to that parking lot there, which is going to be, I thought that was going to be some of the first parking that might have been built out.
Okay.
So,
Let me,
yeah.
in the,
It just comes so close, I
Yes.
just feel that people are probably going to go through there anyway, so you might as well put a trail in so they don't
well,
trash the vegetation.
let's see, okay. Sorry,
Okay, I'm dizzy now.
yeah. So as part, and I don't remember the exact condition number, maybe Jerry, can you look that up? There was a condition that was added that because that we noticed exactly the same thing you did, Tim, that this this sort of north-south pedestrian spine ends right here. Now, it happens to be 5 floors up in the air.
That's well,
Okay?
yeah, above.
So one option, and our sort of first choice, was to provide some kind of stair that cascaded down the south face. The other option was, if we were not able, they were not able to make that happen, that a connection on this side. So in either case, that this really very proximate connection would be added kind of in the middle of the campus.
Okay.
Because we agree. Okay, sorry, watch it go by. Or did you need to say something?
Well, I just wanted to comment that the pedestrian connection plaza across the, west end of that building 3B is an extension of that access all the way through the campus. And that's where our plan, our intent was to provide elevated crossing of the roadway and main floor access to the building. We are reluctant to build another thing just like it on the other side of the building because of the cost, and the staff has suggested that if we built it there, we would have to provide it as grade separated with the parking lot.
So let me clarify that. What the condition says right now is there is a, let's see if I can find a good site plan. So where we're talking about is, this is a pedestrian bridge, and this comes down on the west side. The road is below this pedestrian bridge and is kind of moving up. And what we're saying is, in this area here, there would be that pedestrian connection. What we want is, though, that as it's crossing this entry into the garage, that it is grade separated so that it has a, fully pedestrian separated. So I think what we would be looking at was the ability to potentially, push this road down and have that go over. Not that it's grade separated the whole length from the parking lot, but just for the portion crossing the entry to the garage. These are the kinds of things that's, I think, the importance of the SDP is that we're kind of agreeing to a concept, and then there's a lot of detailed work that's going to have to take place to really understand how all these pieces come together. So zooming back, any more questions on this one? Okay. So, access to the college. When the development agreement was adopted, and some of you may remember this because this development agreement came to the UVDC, there were traffic studies and SEPA analysis that was done about the access, the traffic, assuming both all the parcels were developed for residential uses or that some of the parcels were developed for residential and the college was on this parcel. So this sort of plan was taken into account, and both based on those traffic studies and the SEPA analysis and the roads and intersections that were specified in the development agreement, the proposed roads that exist around the campus are sufficient for the traffic that's going to be provided, and they are built to meet the standards. And as an interconnected network, there will be a number of ways that people will access the campus. This graphic illustrates the most likely.
Yes.
I just want to, so in your response, it looks like, you explained this out, that that's acceptable as far as the studies. I was wondering, is there any possibility we could recommend like speed bumps? Because like Falls Drive, connecting to College Drive, I can see where that would just lend itself to excessive speeds, in and out of the campus. And so speed bumps, is that something that's in our purview to be able to at least recommend speed bumps?
So the fire department's really opposed to speed bumps because of the impacts to response times. So that's outside of this particular proposal. I do think that, the city is going to take it pretty seriously if we get to a point that there's excessive speeding on there. And I appreciate what you're trying to do is identify now, set us up for success, that if there's a problem, that we have some solutions identified. I think that what we would probably prefer to do is to wait and see if there's a problem and what is the nature of the problem. I mean, if it's only happening at one time of the day, it may be that there are just, it takes enforcement action or some kind of other kind of monitoring as opposed to adding something to the roadway. And so I think it's going to depend on what the problem is.
And that makes sense. Thanks, Lucy.
Yeah. So
We're okay on that.
I suspect that there will be a bit of discussion on this when we get
Because that was
to
the
that
second,
point,
that
but
was an
I
option.
think it's a very good question.
So I think that would be worth putting to the record.
Okay.
Lucy, I think for clarity, I think you have AM traffic going up a one-way street right now.
Which one is that? Falls Drive?
Park Drive at that end? Is
Um,
that not correct?
Where are you talking?
No, Park Drive's two-way.
No, when you keep on, I forget what it turns into.
Oh, you mean this arrow?
No,
right
no,
here?
all the way down to the west side, right? Keep going, keep going. Yep, isn't that
This one?
westbound?
Well, you couldn't take a left at that arrow. You'd have to come further down.
That's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
so
Oh, yeah.
you can't
Oh,
go
this
eastbound
Yeah,
right
yeah.
there.
Leg right there.
Okay.
Yeah, you'd have to turn left.
You see
Federal.
Dan's answering because guess who made
That's
you
my
laugh?
graphic.
Am I correct, right?
I always drive that way.
Oh, well, yeah. But you
You-
have the flashing lights, so.
And you're not the only one, based on my observations. Yeah.
Lucy, what are the speed limits on Falls and Park Drive?
Park Drive is 30 miles an hour. I think Falls, because it's not posted, is 25 miles an hour.
So to further elaborate on that, so during the between the Grand Ridge space, it drops down to 20 during peak times, right, during school time. And then it opens back up again to 30 miles per hour westbound. So that's
So
Park Drive.
on Park Drive, is that what you're?
Correct.
So it would,
Also on
I
College
I
Drive,
believe,
Backside too?
Yes, also on College Drive.
Also
there's
on College
reduced
Drive.
right.
permit associated.
So I believe it wouldn't drop to 25, it would be 20, I would think, because that's a school district.
Yeah.
Correct.
I mean, a school zone.
Yes.
College Drive is posted 20, period. I mean, it also has,
Posted 20?
it's posted 20, and then it also has
zone.
school zone 20-mile-an-hour signs. But if you look at it, they're just plain old 20-mile-an-hour signs.
I don't think they can
Signs.
be posted at 20. I don't think the state
Well,
allows
we had
us
this
to
discussion
post.
before. Last time I drove up,
Okay.
it's posted at 20.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so to elaborate further, and in the spirit of setting this up for success, I do want to raise some reservations here with the understanding that traffic studies were completed for this space. I still have reservations in regards to access point off of Park Drive, 15th going through the apartment
Hey,
complex.
Scott, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I actually would love to get through these things, and I want to have a real discussion about this,
You wanna hold
this
this?
very thing, yeah.
Okay.
Because I have some comments. I think Tim intimated that he might, or at least had some facial expressions that said he might. So if you don't mind, I really hate to cut you off, but I do think it's a further discussion point. Yeah, thanks. I'd be okay cutting Carl off. I'm just not good cutting you off. So.
Okay. So are we saying we've have enough in terms of the response and we'll discuss it later?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so, because I want to hear public comment too before
Okay.
we get into further discussion about it. Yeah.
There was a question about whether it was necessary to have 2 points of access directly into the campus. And yes, we do need 2 points, and we would consider that it does have 2 points. These 2 arrows represent those 2 points. They're off the same road, And we might not consider them 2 points if you couldn't if College Drive didn't connect to 2 different roadways, and therefore you could approach it from both directions. And then, of course, there is the potential 3rd connection down here. And we also reviewed this with Eastside Fire and Rescue, and they considered sufficient 2 points of connection. Central Park Spur Road. So there was a lot of questions, what's the likelihood that this will happen? What actions and players are involved? Would putting the mountain bike skills course harm the trees? There wouldn't be enough visibility to the mountain bike skills course if it was moved into the trees. Trade that forested area next to the campus for some other portion of the site on the Bellevue College campus because it's better quality forest. Make sure that we do not lose the mountain bike skills course. The community worked really hard for this, and we want to be clear that the mountain bike skills course won't disappear if the road goes through. So many pieces there. So first of all, let me start with this map, which is the proposal. So all the land that you see in this proposal is owned by the city. The sort of emerald green that you see here, which actually loops around this way, is Central Park. And let me just say, Carl's turning his head, north is down.
I was just going to say, for clarification, south is up, right?
Yeah. Right. And there was a reason I did that, and
I was turning my head to read, and I wanted to look like a dog.
Dan always does this, and I try never to do this, but I've done it throughout this report. The maps are oriented all higgledy-piggledy, and I apologize. It's part of our old brain preservation program. So Park Drive would be down here. This is the road into Central Park, and then the one over towards 24th. So the park wraps, this is the little kind of part of the pad that has not been developed. It wraps around, and this is the rest of Central Park, and these are the artificial turf soccer fields. So the emerald green is the park. The sort of tan olive color is the protected forested area. And this shows the proposal with the road and parking going through and shifting the components of the mountain bike skills course into this forested area with the assumption that the trees would be left. It would be the brush and stuff underneath that would be removed. This is all just a proposal at this point because it's not Bellevue College's land, and there would need to be a negotiation. We appreciated the commission bringing up the concern that this implied that we weren't that serious about the mountain bike skills course, and there is no intention to indicate that we are getting rid of the mountain bike skills course. That was an element of the development agreement. But we are willing to, as part of considering this shared facility of parking, consider relocating the mountain bike skills course to another location. One to consider would be the one that Bellevue College has shown. Another one would be whether there's, a pad such as this kind of contained portion of Central Park that it could go there. So I think that there's a broader discussion between the city, the BPA, and Bellevue College about what those options might be. I just wanted to show you, though, that although this has it all, this is where the trail comes through, south, that trail that the King County Trail we've been talking about. So this drawing here, or this photo here, annotated photo, these orange dots indicate the same point between these two maps. So this is the tower that carries the power lines in both proposals. So you can see that the original proposal for the mountain bike skills course had it both north and south of that tower. And in this location, it's all north. So there's several different possibilities about where this could go. And really, it will take sitting down, looking at topography, trees, purposes, possible land. It's going to be a complicated discussion. But I think the important thing to emphasize is that we're not trying to get rid of the mountain bike skills course, and there are many owners that would have to, and easement holders that would have to agree to this. Okay. Phasing, I think we pretty much touched on this. The numbers on the buildings do reflect the initial phasing. It may not happen like that, but we do also have a condition, number 1, that talks about if it's built in phases, that it has to comply, each phase is going to have to comply with the development agreement, and that we have the ability to look at it as those phases, before those phases are submitted for construction, to ensure that they are done appropriately. Clearing and grading. The first thing that would happen, they are not allowed to clear and grade until they have a land use permit. This permit would count as their land use permit. So there would first be a plant salvage, which is just basically an opportunity for people to come in and remove native plants and reuse them in other locations. The city, property owners, parks, all kinds of people take advantage of those. They would be allowed to clear 100% of their property, because there's about 43 acres of property that has been set aside and permanently protected. However, their current plan, and we would expect through clearing and grading that they're consistent with that, they're retaining a certain area in natural vegetation, preserving the trees and everything that's there. This would be at their discretion, and there may be advantages to them to clear all the area they're going to clear at one time. Economy of scale, selling trees, grading the site so that it balances. But whatever way they end up clearing it, the site must always be stabilized, not have erosion. You know, there's going to be certain minimum protections that are required, whether they do the clearing in phases or all at one time. I don't know if you want to add something.
No, I don't think so. I think you summarized it well.
Any other questions about this one?
Just to be clear, when you said they would be allowed to clear 100% of the area that they were planning on clearing, not the area that shows as being left in vegetation.
Likely not. I mean, and the reason I say that, Chantal, is they are allowed to clear all of their site. They aren't proposing to do that now, and if they made that change, we would want to look at why that was appropriate and how that's still achieving the intent of the plan. But they have the right through the development agreement to clear all of their property. So I think what that would mean is if they did that, then they would have to replant it to end up with a natural feeling site. So, you know, the question would be, and where is the advantage of that?
So isn't there any critical areas or anything? I'm thinking of this whole segment here, which I thought was going to stay in vegetation.
All of the buffer for the wetlands that are near the site is off of their property.
Okay.
And so unless something's discovered in the process of clearing their property, there are no restrictions from the buffers of critical areas. That was pretty intentional to keep it off their property.
Thank you.
16 had to do with height and how that's measured and how the site will be perceived. It was, Nina and I talked about it a little bit more. She, I think, brought a lot of this up, partly because of discussions we've had with other development agreements. Originally, when the development agreement was adopted, there was a 50-foot height limit, but there was a specific modification to the development agreement that was called out that would allow them to go to 75 feet. And they exercised that option. And the purpose of that was potentially to do what they are showing here, which is having taller buildings and not spreading them out all over the site. Unlike some of the more recent development agreements where we're measuring in terms of stories, in this development agreement, height is measured as feet from the finished grade, and since it's sloped, it would be measured kind of in a series of points around the outside to create an average. There are some exceptions, such as water tanks, chimneys, flagpoles. It's the same kinds of exceptions you've seen in other development agreements. Currently, there are conservation easements to the east, south, and west, which would limit tree removal. One of the comments that the commission made talked about how the trees of that forested buffer, 100-foot forested buffer on the east side, screened the buildings from views above. And I think I said something which may have not been correct, so I want to make sure I get it right. Which is that the buildings may be visible because of the angle of the buildings just east of South Pond are probably high enough and the angle is steep enough that you would see the buildings. So it wasn't, the intent of those trees wasn't to completely screen the campus, but the intent was to make sure that the buildings on the campus would not block the sort of prime views that those houses have. And that's the text that you find down here. So that, you know, valuable westerly vistas, including those of Lake Sammamish, Seattle, and the Olympic Mountains, would not be obstructed by buildings. And the trees are 100 feet. The buildings are allowed to be 75 feet. The land is dropping away from the trees. So if the trees aren't blocking it now, no views would be impacted.
What is the land use, the proposed land use in the
West. Microphone. You need your microphone on, Chantal.
Oh, I thought. What is the land use, the proposed land use in that area? I was walking down yesterday looking at the site, and there's across from, again, looking at this, would be this area right here.
Okay. So
it's elevated.
this little area right here, this is part
kind of looking down. And
right. So this area, so this is Grand Ridge Element. Well, here, let me do this. So you can see, is it this little area you're talking about? Because all of this.
It's elevated above the road and look graded, and I don't know if it's going to be houses that will.
No, that's part.
Houses that will be looking right into those buildings, or
That's all Central Park.
that is.
It's just,
okay.
it's called
Deep
pad,
down.
it's called pad 4.
Okay.
It's been filled but has not been developed. So it is still available, but it would be for park uses.
Okay.
And there has been some discussion between, very preliminary, you know, whether there's an opportunity for the city parks and Bellevue College to partner on some kind of recreation facility.
So at this point, there's really no residential area looking into. Keep
So-
turning it up.
So here, the South Pond that I referred to is here, and you would have to be east of the South Pond before you got, you know, this is about as close as there are any residences to Bellevue College from above.
I just have a correction, I think, on the last slide. The slide with the words. Yeah, I think it's pediments, not impediments.
You know, those architects,
The-
they're
you know,
very impediment.
Might be getting in the way of things, but I think you're just looking for adornment.
Thank you. I'm glad you're paying attention, Carl. Thank you. Okay, any more questions on height? So 17, I don't know how much the rest of you are interested. I know this was very much a question of Nina's, but we really spent a lot of time trying to clear this up. When you look at the development agreement, there's sort of two sections of the development agreement that talk about entitlement and accessory uses. The main body of the development agreement is completely about entitlement. The Appendix E, which is land uses, is both the uses that are allowed and the entitlement, how you calculate the entitlement. And in a very unusual move, we are also looking at the purchase and sale agreement and the CC&Rs, or conditions, covenants, conditions, and restrictions. Normally, we don't look at that because that's a private agreement between the master developer and the property owner. But in this case, the city is one of the master developers. And so we went into those documents, and what we found really was the clearest answer, which is this piece that's highlighted over here, which is that accessory uses shall not count against the project BSF, base square feet. So the BSF is this sort of base 372,000. So accessory uses would be on top of that. There are, though there's not a square footage restriction, there are some other things that will definitely restrict them. They're very specific land uses that are allowed as accessory uses. And they would also have to provide additional traffic and infrastructure if they exceed certain minimums that were the basis for the development agreement. So we assume there'd be so much traffic, there'd be so much utilities. If they exceed that in the accessory uses that are built, they would have to provide additional facilities.
So Lucy,
Go ahead.
So I think I was one of those in addition tonight
Okay.
that brought that up because it was talking, because it, from the documentation we had, it was fairly ambiguous and fairly open-ended. So accessory uses definition was ambiguous, and then it made it very open-ended as about how much square footage there could be. And then you said, well, it's, it limits, and then in the equation-wise, it limits how much is going on. But I see, and in some of these examples, like libraries and cafeterias, those can be fairly significant. So that's, spirit-wise, sounds like more than what you were intimating in the last meeting. I
Well,
recognize that still when you get to the overall trip impacts and whatnot, that they had to be able to
Can I add a
to handle that with the infrastructure. But those are fairly significant uses.
So they could be significant uses, although those uses are serving people who are on the campus. I mean, there's restrictions on signage. There are all kinds of things to really ensure that they're for the people who are already on the campus. The other piece is that the uses that are listed in the development agreement may be a little more strict than these. Why don't you go ahead while I'm going?
I was just going to make the comment that, in our view, the application of accessory spaces is space that generally isn't going to attract more users. It's space that's there to support the users that are already on campus, like a cafeteria and like a library, as examples.
And that makes sense to me, and I appreciate that. One thing that you're probably not aware of is we have accessory dwelling units and other things that significantly impact counts of human beings and whatnot in the long run that we've been dealing with for years. So I think that the term accessory sort of sends off a trigger for us, too.
Well, and I would ask.
That's where the term came from, I know. It's from the residential part.
I would ask, though, like a theater, for example, that would draw additional people because, having been in theater programs in school, you have your classes there, you learn there, and, train there, whatever. But then you put on a show, and it adds a bunch of extra people. And I'm guessing it's not just people who are already on campus. So that one, for example, could be different. Now, maybe it's in off-peak hours or something, so maybe it's not an issue. But maybe a cafeteria or a coffee shop or something, just the way this community is built, we walk a lot. People walk past there a lot. And, I wonder if you're walking up College Drive and you decide you want to go get a cup of coffee or a bite to eat, just as if you were walking past Swedish, we all have the ability to go into Swedish and have a meal or have a coffee or whatever. Will that not be the case at Bellevue College? Will people not be invited in or allowed to go in for those sorts of things?
No.
Shop the bookstore, that sort of thing?
That won't be the case. People, I think, the city and the community desire to have access and that they're partners kind of with the college and neighbors. And I expect there, as far as I know, there are no restrictions on the existing main campus like that.
Right.
Anybody can go onto campus and access the cafeteria and I don't know, but and the bookstore, I suppose, probably not the library. Well, they probably could use the library too. Yeah.
Well, and so
Yeah, but I think the important thing to note is that they're not allowed to sign it.
they're not allowed to what?
Sign it.
Okay, but if people know about it, I guess my point is to
The community would know about it, I'm
right,
sure,
but
over time.
to tack onto what Carl was saying, that could add additional people could drive there, or, add it. So I'm wondering, if a bunch of accessory uses are built, how does that affect the minimum or even the proposed parking number, for example, if we're going to allow the public to come in and use the cafeteria and the bookstore and whatever else? So
the parking was calculated for all the uses. The accessory uses were not excluded from the parking counts.
Okay.
So we just decided if at some point in the future it is not, they want to ask for us not to count that because of the way the parking is being used, so that they can get lower than that, then we could consider that at that time. But for now, it seemed that we should be parking for all of it.
Can you,
I'm sorry,
go ahead.
just to finish up, but I'm not sure how you'd calculate parking then for accessory uses that are not being calculated into sort of a maximum square footage. How would you know what that's going to look like?
So there's a maximum square footage of the principal uses. The restrictions on the accessory uses are not square footage. We know what the square footage of them are, so we can use it for parking.
Oh, okay.
But there's not a maximum. They have proposed how much they're
I
going,
see.
accessory
Okay.
uses.
So you have a number you're working with,
Yes.
as opposed to saying there's this open-ended number of accessory uses
Right.
that we're sort of guessing how many parking spots are
Right.
needed.
So
Okay.
they proposed 55,000 square feet,
Okay.
which includes, a multi-use space
Okay.
and.
So if that number changes, then you recalculate and have that discussion. Okay, that's helpful. Carl?
when you said they're not allowed to sign it, I heard several up here. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
There are no exterior signs allowed. That's what the CCNRs say. So,
To promote the
right, yes,
uses.
oh, okay, thank you. I'm speaking as if we're only talking about accessory uses. They're allowed to have exterior signs, just not for any of the accessory uses.
Are they allowed to have wayfinding once you find Bellevue? I mean, you advertise a theater and or a show and the connections, and you send people to the theater.
So I think we're going to have, I understand your question. I wondered the same thing. I'm simply reporting what the document says, and that will be something we'll have to work through.
I mean, like if there's a Starbucks on campus, they can't advertise it on the street that there's
Well,
a
if you
Starbucks.
think about Swedish, they have a Starbucks and
Right.
there's no exterior signage.
Right, exactly, yeah.
And there's not any exterior signage for Cafe 1907 or whatever the name of it is. So that was not a requirement on our part. That was a choice on their part, because I think they wanted it to be treated as something that was open to the public, available to people who came up there, but not something that they were trying to attract people from off-site. So
Okay.
it's not a dissimilar model.
But to Carl's point, there are wayfinding signs available. Obviously, you'll have wayfinding. This is where the X building is and the bookstore and so forth. So
Scarecrow.
let's hope. Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions on this? So we tweaked the language to include the CCNRs and to be clear that infrastructure included roads in the condition. And then 18, there was a question about what the extent of changes could be once they receive approval, and why are they doing this now? And from our perspective, there is value in having a picture of how, setting a framework for the whole property. And, from our perspective, it just means that we understand what's coming and what to expect, and we've had this conversation with you. For them, it means that they can go away and start doing fundraising and detailed plans and thinking about programming, knowing what the framework for them is. There is text in the staff report that describes minor and major modifications. So as long as they are maintaining the character, intent, the uses, and that's part of the importance of having a discussion with you and good minutes from Susan, that we are able to sort of identify the key components that were the basis of this approval. And as long as they're consistent with that, that would be considered minor. And if they, moved a building in where there was a parking lot, we might say that's a major change, and we need to go back to the UVDC and have a conversation and re-review that.
So I'm hearing that it doesn't come back to us unless there's something completely major, right? Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right, so that was the staff presentation and the applicant report, correct?
Yes.
Combined. So before we get into discussion, if everybody's cool with it, I'd like to ask for public comment, and then we can chat. So if anybody, Mr. Kapler or others would like to speak, please come on up. We're going to take a 30-second break so we can grab some coffee.
Yeah. It's empty. That's, sorry. Yes. There's water. It's empty. Yeah, I got a splash on. Hopefully it's enough.
All right, thanks.
Okay, great. David Kapler, 255 Southeast Andrews Street. The 100-foot strip of forest land is in that 43 acres of protected, covenanted property. So what we can do with that is very limited. Also, the idea of having the parking lots closer to the forest rather than buildings, I think, makes sense because the slope is down and the buildings will be lower, and you'll still see the parking lots. Having the parking lots visible from buildings is a good idea. You know, that was the deal we dealt with up at Tradition Plateau. First they talked about it, the trailhead there, having all these little parking lots hidden in the trees so it was easy to break into cars. And having it out there in plain sight is not pretty, but it's a lot safer. The use of that 100-foot strip of land, just putting trails through it for bikes is not what they expect from the skills park. Port Blakely has committed $30,000 to building, structures and different things in it. Plus, the community expects to put in a lot of labor to use that money. So it's not something you can just put in a forest and expect the forest to work. So now, if they want more property, the BPA land is constrained by that conservation easement, and if they want an acre of that crummy land, they're going to have to give up a good an acre of nice, good forest to get it. So I think it's in their interest to do that because they need land if they want to have a road or a parking. That'd be fine. The idea of sharing that parking is fine. They might have weekend things that will attract people. Bus service is certainly going to be limited on weekends, so if they do have people in weekend type programs a lot, they're almost all going to be driving and coming possibly from distances, so it's not like they're going to be all carpooling like regular students might. So, but the idea of any sharing that can be done would be great, because I know it gets kind of crazy up there on weekends. The new condition 28, I think, was item number 9. It was condition number 28. That was good. It does get complicated about lighting of the trail, because the trail, it has a big dip right here, and they connect in a good place, but you're still in the woods, you're going across the wetland and that. So you've got some areas there where you'd have to continue that lighting. You certainly don't want to just light it on the college property, have people go down it, and then get into a long stretch of darkness. So that would have to be worked out. And that, of course, would be part of King County would have to work it out as well. It would appear connecting to the county trail would be easier over here, and it's fine horizontally, but vertically it doesn't work. And this, getting into here, there's some real speed issues and visibility issues, especially at this corner here. And getting the people coming right into here onto that trail and the BPA and connecting to the county trails would be definitely more preferable. And there are likely going to be some modifications to this trail in here because of the steepness in the blind corner and erosion that's already occurring. I hope we can make this thing work, and I think it'll be, you know, some really positive things will come out of it. I think we'll see some of that 20 acres or approximately they have up there will remain in high quality forest, and that's exciting. And good partnerships on the interpretive potential trail and some of the other open space. If we can make better access, make some of this work over here in the BPA, that sounds good to me. Parking would be welcome. Another option, seems like it's gonna be awful steep to get up to that little roundabout kind of thing there too, so I don't know how possible that is. That intersection on this lower road is gonna be interesting too. How the road's pretty steep right in there. You know, you're gonna have a tilted road to it. And if you're going to have a flat intersection, you're going to have to then steepen up the road even more to take care of that. So that's one of the benefits of trying to do something over here. But good luck with that. I think we're going in the right direction here, and I appreciate your thoughtful work on it.
Thank you, Mr. Kapler, as always. Is there anybody else that would like to speak during the public comment portion? If you could please, I don't know where the sign-up sheet is, but state your name and address, please. You have it? Thanks.
Can I do that afterwards? Is that
Yeah, that's
all right?
fine.
Okay. Thanks for taking.
You can just state your name and address.
Yeah, Patrick D'Ambrosio. I work for a company called National Frozen Foods and live off of 14th Place Northeast, 1645 14th Place Northeast. Appreciate the opportunity and the chance to sit in and listen to the conversation. Just kind of curious about the questions that will be raised in regards to traffic off of Falls Drive there. Obviously, I'm on the 14th side, so won't have exactly the direct traffic that Falls Drive and Park Avenue will have, but just curious on and concerned about the traffic that'll come with new campus. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anybody else like to speak at this time during public comment portion? Last call. All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public comment portion of this hearing. Thank you. Okay, folks. First of all, thank you. I'm sorry I wasn't here at the last meeting, but I appreciate everything that has been done by the staff and the applicant, the comments by the public, and all the work by the commission. I did do my homework and research on this and feel like I'm up to speed pretty well, but I do have a few questions. But at this time, I'd like to go ahead and just open up the discussion between us. There are a couple things that I think are most prevalent, I think. One would be access to the facility, in and out, and the resulting traffic. I don't know if we need to get into the conversation about lighting anymore, because I think on the trail, if you want to talk about it, we can, but I think they're going to address that. And then I have a couple of questions about the build-out timing and so forth. I don't know if there are other topics you guys wanted to bring up.
I have one minor one about the trail, just to make a point.
Okay.
The others are more major and time-consuming.
Want to go ahead and start that?
So I guess the one thing to build on what Mr. Kapler was saying, and I didn't want to get into it because I felt like I was trying to design it in place, but I do hope that there's a thorough look at all the different connection points, and I'm reading the contours and go, okay, can it go in there? And it's hard to tell the elevations, and you look at what I think of now as that spur out to the BPA patch in the park. I just, careful consideration to all the different entry and exit points to that, I think, is warranted, because there's some great opportunities. Part of me looks at it as, okay, if I'm trying to commute in and out of the campus as one way or one thing, I'm going, well, who's going to use it on the south? But I would when I was taking a long walk. So just lots of opportunities there for, I think, good interaction with the community.
Thank you. Oh, and I would be remiss if I didn't say parking might be a topic as well. We didn't.
Traffic and
Yeah,
parking.
okay. All right, so why don't we go ahead and I'll just throw out my comments on the access and the roads. You know, having lived off of really driving down 15th, across Park Drive from the Windhaven property, you know, I am very, very concerned that that's going to be the major entry point off of Park Drive, just because it always felt to me like a driveway into an apartment building, as that's how it was originally built, with a little additional, some additional standards, I think, associated with it. But, as you go up there, as you're heading to the south, up 15th, what's that? Well, not only is it a crosswalk, but there's a pool on the west side and tons of apartments on the east side, and a lot of activity, particularly in the spring and summer months, during those times when, like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, when pedestrians are going through there. In addition, the health club for that facility is there, and probably equally important is, as people are heading northbound out of there, it's already very, very difficult for residents to get out with the light. So I don't know if there's any plan for a dedicated left turn signal out of there. It's really difficult to seem to make that work.
Got Dan Urban.
Thank you, Dan. Yes. So.
And if I could just add, when we were given the presentation, I think the indication was that was designed to be the major, access point through 15.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'd like to start with 15th, if that's okay. If anybody else wants to add anything.
I
Before
mentioned
Dan.
it last time, but I'm seeing more and more traffic of people who are actually avoiding Park and are cutting through Ellis and Falls and going up College, so they don't have to go through the hall back up in front of the school. So this is adding to something that I have the feeling is going to be building up quite a bit over the next, and I don't know if that was even considered in the original traffic studies that were made.
I'll take it a step further. So on the topic of 15th here, right-hand turns going southbound up 15th. Again, you have that crosswalk that parallels to the two building structures there. That to me seems like a very narrow roadway. I drive it frequently, taking my daughter to school. To your point, we have high pedestrian traffic that walks through there, in addition to 2 parking lots that sit to the east and to the west, so you've got additional vehicle traffic coming through there. Just seems like we're going to be compounding the issue in that space alone with that access point. So that's all I'll plug on that for now, and we'll move forward.
Dan.
I'm not sure which one of those to tackle first or how comprehensively to talk about it. So I'll ramble and you let me know if I'm going too deep or not deep enough.
Do you want me to go back to the other map?
Yeah, that'd probably be a good idea. The roadway network, obviously when the development was initially planned and the initial traffic modeling occurred in Issaquah Highlands, Falls Drive and College Drive were not there. And Park Drive was designed to be able to accommodate all of the traffic for the development that was moving through. And it was originally designed and built as 4 lanes rather than 2 lanes. That was predominantly to be able to accommodate Town Center actually being where Village Green is now. So one of the original land use plans had all of the commercial area to the east where Village Green is. When that didn't happen and Town Center happened in the west, Park Drive was converted into 2 lanes because we just simply didn't have the traffic that we needed to anymore. Then when this development was anticipated and contemplated and this development agreement was in process, both Falls Drive and College Drive came about as a result of this land use in conjunction with the rest of the land use. So that's a really long way of saying that yes, all of the roads that are there today were built to accommodate all of the land uses that are currently on the table, and that includes this application, Bellevue College. So there's capacity there for all of that. 15th Avenue actually was reconfigured and the light was added as a development agreement condition specifically for this project. So that light wasn't designed in general to work. It was designed to work specifically with the traffic patterns that were generated by the WashDOT development, which includes the campus. So the modeling that's been done has shown that the light operates at level of service A, in fact, which is the best there is in PM peak hour, and all of the movements except one operated level of service B in the PM peak hour. So I'm not relating to the anecdotal story about it's difficult to take a left out of there. I haven't done that. I haven't watched and noticed that, so I can't address that specifically. What I can say is the light was designed with this land use in mind and these traffic patterns contemplated. 15th, and by the way, is a standard street section, so those are standard lane widths. And I share your thought that it seems narrower, and I don't know if that's because it was originally built as a driveway and then converted to a road, so you metaphorically still think of it as having that use, or whether there's some other geometry there that creates the illusion. But it's a standard roadway. And it's again, I think, probably a bit misleading from an intuition standpoint when we think about, well, that's residents going to their pool and now we've just bisected them with a road. I don't really think there's any reason to think that there are going to be more pedestrians crossing 15th in the apartment complex than there will be in the campus trying to get from one set of buildings to another. They'll have the same challenges across the same roads with the same amount of traffic. So is that something that we plan to have happen that way? Not necessarily, but those movements and those pedestrians are accommodated in our road sections and in our pedestrian-oriented walkable community.
Thanks for that. I think that I actually don't have an issue with the capacity because I believe that that's true, that the capacity is there. Where I have a challenge is that you're going through heavily populated, if you will, fairly dense neighborhoods to get through to a more, I'll say, more commercial type of location, which doesn't feel quite right and feels more dangerous. And if I were living on that street, I don't think I'd be too pleased with dozens or hundreds or scores or whatever number of cars.
Be specific whether you're talking about College Drive or Park Drive.
Yes. Talking about both because, and to your point about 15th, yeah, I remember when it was a driveway and we are bisecting that, and I don't disagree that it won't be more people crossing, but it's different because they live there. Their kids after school going to the pool. It's different than college students at any age crossing from building to building because they're going to college, just as if I was at the Microsoft campus and I'm crossing to the parking lot from building to building. It's a place of work. It's not a residential neighborhood where you have small children and they're crossing with their whatever floaties or whatever they got going on. It just feels wrong. And so I think between that and the steepness, it's not that steep, but the steepness of the hill on 15th and the buildings and the use is so close to that road, it does feel narrower than across the street on 15th, where you've got the sidewalks as they are and the road with the way it is and the houses the way they're set back and so forth. So, perception is reality and reality is reality, and reality is anecdotally for me that people coming out of 15th today in the mornings, I see it every morning, that there's a lot of frustration across the way of people who can't turn left onto Park Drive. So whether that's anecdotal or real, to me it's real because perception is reality for me. So, and I was going to ask and I think the answer is no, but Falls Drive, is there no possible way to run a road from where the curve would be on Falls Drive just east of that arrow into the Bellevue College site from the west? I know that's a totally ridiculous probably question, but instead of having to curl through the houses, I know I just don't know. Is there anything there? Or no? It's all built out, right?
There are also two wetlands that
Two wetlands.
stand in the way from here to there as well.
Yeah, I suspected it's not
and
it wouldn't have been an oversight, I think. There's a reason.
And some really nasty topography.
Okay.
Yeah. Steep.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't have a solution here, but I am very, very concerned. Eric.
So I just want to add, thanks, Daniel, as always. That's very illuminating, your aspect or perspective, and I appreciate that. And I agree. I went back because 15th did appear very narrow, and I went back and looked at that. And I think it's because of the encroachment of the apartments that make it look that way. So it indeed a regular roadway. Even though I would almost prefer to have that actually like closed off to where it's just an entrance to the apartment complex rather than a thoroughfare through that apartment complex, because I agree with Jeff, just with the kids, it's just odd, to be in the middle of an apartment complex that way. And I also agree with Lucy. I appreciate your feedback. As far as my concern with Falls Drive, not having speed bumps, but there are other tools in place, either cameras or something that could be put in that would, I think, be very effective to slowing down the traffic. And it does appear that that road, I went back to visit that too, and it looks like it, accommodate that, obviously, through your studies, confirmed that. But so the only thing I would maybe like to see added is actually close 15th off to where you just can't have that as a thoroughfare. If
So
that's,
that was a requirement for that project to be built, was that road could be opened in the future.
All the way
I
through.
mean, that was from the very beginning.
to go all the way through.
Yep.
Oh, well.
Because that was the one place that you could get good access into this property. I mean, not for Bellevue College, but for, remember there's the WashDOT expansion area, and there's the WashDOT.
All of the expansion parcels.
And that was a big negotiation with that property owner. We were very clear that if that property was developed, that road was going to have to go through. So, they had some of the same concerns, and they chose to put their clubhouse away from the rest of the property. So,
But did they chose that before, right? Before this road was required?
Well,
no,
that
15th
corridor
been
was,
required since 1998.
Right.
that corridor was always a roadway.
But it was the driveway originally, was it not?
Right, it was built as a driveway, well, it was built as an entrance just into
Yeah.
that project.
Yeah.
And they understood and agreed at the time, before they built anything, that that could become a road if that property to the south was developed.
Yeah, I understand that. That's a decision made by, theoretically, business people or bureaucrats, not the families that live there, and they don't know the history, so it's still a challenge for them. Yeah, Tim.
What kind of controls are there going to be at the intersection of 15th and Falls and College? Because is there anything there now? I mean, it's been a
Stop sign.
while. And that would continue that way? No thoughts of a traffic light or
Well, there's-
preferential directional control? Because it's hard to see. Some people are going to decide one way or another to come up and choose one of two, but coming down might be a little bit harder to get out if you wanted to turn left off of College down Falls, even though that might be a preferred way to go.
Right. At the planning process where we are now, those decisions are based on models. And the model today doesn't warrant anything more than a stop sign at that intersection. In the future, though, the city will periodically, if there appears to be a problem, do traffic counts. And those can be used to do other things. So the decision we make today is not final. The city will, over the years, modify the roadway network and the traffic signal network as necessary to meet the city's level of service standards and their other design standards. But the tools that we have today say no signal is warranted at that location.
Okay, thank you.
Scott? Yeah, continue with this.
Okay, so thank you. Questions, well, I'm just going to call this out. The drive through Forest Ridge, the access point that runs through Forest Ridge, I just want to raise this as a flag as well. Again, primary access point to get up to College Drive through a very dense residential area. Parking on one side or both sides of the streets? I think it's just the western side of the street is allowed. So point being that again, if we're intending to facilitate traffic through that neighborhood, that is a dense neighborhood. We are talking about high volume traffic. So that aside, I'd like to go eastbound up Park Drive to the access point or the throughway of Central Park. Is it Central Park Drive? Is that the roadway?
I don't know what it's called. But
Okay,
let's call it
so the roadway that runs north and south along Central Park, and the intent or the
Corner of the
vision,
reservoir.
the corridor that we're looking to provide additional access down to Bellevue College. big reservations for me if the intent here is we're going to utilize that as a primary thoroughfare to get to the college campus. As currently constructed, that's a key point right there. Consistently, again, I use that roadway on a regular basis, taking my daughter up to the fields, soccer practice, whatever. That quickly and consistently becomes a one-lane road on a regular basis with the parking that is currently allowed on the eastern side of that roadway. I can tell you from previous many experiences when there are major soccer practices up at the new field up there, I have seen on several occasions where we have traffic cops that are directing traffic because it is so backed up along that way. So, again, food for thought. What are the opportunities?
The intersect where that road right there intersects the Park Road.
Mm-hmm.
Between there and Park Drive, there isn't any parking. So the parking which causes the congestion occurs south of there, and it would be, of course, impossible or improbable to say cars won't come from that direction. But at least in the model, most of the commuters coming into the campus from the east are coming down Park Drive and then from the north, right? Then through that section.
It's still intended to be a primary access point to the new campus, though, right?
Well,
or one
Well,
of
not the
one
part,
of.
not the part where the parking is. I hear what you're saying, but if there is additional parking added to the BPA, then it would become
certainly
a thoroughfare,
right.
And so that would be an issue. So I'm not a big fan of the idea of parking on the BPA, just for the record, and that's one of the reasons why.
So to your point, the city will continue to investigate opportunities and do traffic studies, so forth, as this builds out, is what I heard.
Yes.
And so the opportunity could present itself based upon continued or enhanced traffic patterns that a light would necessitate itself at some point in time.
Certainly.
Off of Park to the Central Park access point. So, I personally see that as a potential need now, right? But that aside, I would just like to, being forward-thinking here, what are the opportunities around expansion of that roadway along Central Park Drive if the intent is to funnel that traffic through appropriately and mitigate further congestion along that roadway? Or remove the parking, but I mean that's
would be
So we're not, I think you're getting outside of what we can talk about with this. I mean, you had this opportunity with the development agreement, unfortunately. And if the roadway comes in from the BPA, I think that would be a time at which we would have to talk about the Central Park Road and whether we can add more capacity to it. But the section that goes from Park Drive to College Drive doesn't have on-street parking,
Yeah, I don't think that's the issue, and I'm not sure I agree with you that we had the opportunity during the DA because we didn't know a lot of this stuff, and it wasn't proposed that this was going to be, the BPA and so forth. So I don't think that but to your point, we can get to that, we can have that conversation if we get to that BPA discussion, I guess. I mean, I guess the bottom line is we all know what traffic is like, regardless of what the studies say, regardless of what the service level. I have no idea what service level A, B, C, Z means because I don't understand that stuff, but I can tell you what it's like to drive in and out of there. And, with the piece of land that's just south of Falls Drive now, I'm not even sure who's building up there anymore because it seems to change every...
Ichijo?
No, not Ichijo plus, what were the Burnsteads?
Toll Brothers.
Toll Brothers, okay. We're talking another, I don't know, several hundred, whatever. Well, maybe not several hundred, but I don't know what the numbers are. Yeah, but however many trips are going to come in and out of there, too, and they're all going to converge on Falls Drive. So, and then the other thing is where Falls Drive goes, and we were talking about that road in front of the homes, we're going to see people cutting down the secondary road between that neighborhood as well if we start to see very heavy traffic patterns. So, what's that? 14th, that's your road, right? Yes. So, anyway, it's just a major concern for me.
And I guess a couple of things, just observations. The first of them is traffic is going to get worse. We can't expect that a partially developed project is going to have all of its traffic in it. So as we develop, and this is one of the last parcels to develop, it's going to get worse than it is now. So any intuitive sense that we're full, that's not what the original entitlements enabled, and that's not what the modeling supports. So there is capacity on the existing roadways for more traffic. Does it mean that it will be more congested? Of course it does, but there is capacity there. But at least from an intuitive standpoint, the number of cars that will be on Falls Drive, and I'm now relating information that comes out of the model, so to the extent that the model is right, that's a neighborhood with a standard street on it. If you take 24th north of Park Drive or 24th south of Park Drive, that roadway is the same cross-section, less one lane of parking, and has more traffic on it in the peak hour than Falls Drive will after the college is built, and they utilize all 907 peak hour trips that are available to them. So those are also dense residential neighborhoods, and they appear to be working fine and to be an asset to the community. So will Falls Drive have more traffic? Yes. Will it have an unusually high number of cars compared to the rest of the project? No.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And, you know, I've been a strong proponent of sharing that kind of information with my neighbors after living here so long, knowing that it's going to get worse when Starbucks comes in, when the grocery store comes in. And I know the capacities are there. To me, it's about the uses. There's not a college at the end of, and numbers are important, right? I mean, we got to compare the numbers and say that the capacity's there, but it's sort of the type of use and the transient. You know, I hate to say it. Don't want to talk about the behavior of drivers, but I can tell you the behavior of drivers, people going into the apartments, are not homeowners, and oftentimes are younger, sometimes less conscientious, perhaps. I don't want to indict anybody, but I see it. Type of drivers, and I don't know what it's going to be like at the college. It's just different than a residential.
There's a reason why 17-year-olds' insurance rates are higher.
Yeah. So anyway, mine too, right? But yeah, so that's my concern is the use there and what it's going to do to those residential streets, not the number of cars, because I think the capacity is there. I'm not worried about that part, but I can't do anything about that.
I concur with that. I'm not so opposed to the number of cars that are going to be added. It's speed, particularly on Falls Drive. Dan, who was responsible for putting in the camera just down here before the high school, between the community center and the high school?
I don't know.
Because that, to me, that's the one single tool that I've never seen have more of an effect than that. I mean, people don't go the speed limit anymore through there. It's always 20.
Yeah.
People are scared to death that a camera's going to catch them. So, you know, I'm a proponent
and
of throwing those up there.
The city does have those cameras and has used them. In fact, we had one on Park Drive for several years. I don't know if they put the one at the school, but the city has done that in the past for traffic calming purposes.
And I think that's why when Lucy brought up that, you know, rather than put in restrictions at this point like speed bumps, let us see what goes on. And then we do have tools available like the cameras that appear to be very effective, you know, so I would concur with that also.
Yeah, I guess my biggest thing is, you know, look, we're fitting the models. There's not a lot we can do about it because it was the DA allows us to use, and we've got the roads at the roadway, you know, setups that we have planned and so forth. I guess my biggest thing is that we pay extra special attention to how things actually develop there in terms of traffic patterns and speeds and that sort of thing, even parking, you know, people parking down there or whatever, and that we address it in a timely manner that's not difficult for the residents to come up and say, hey, we want to have this conversation and find out what our options are, because, you know, if someone says the warrant says there's, you know, it doesn't warrant a traffic light now, but everybody believes for some reason that, you know, for safety reasons or convenience reason, whatever, we got to have that conversation. We got to have the ability to have that conversation.
I just want to add, I know within Tallis there was an intersection that some parents had concern about, and we're able to get a stop sign, four-way stop sign installed there. So it does appear that the city has been responsive and you know, diligent in addressing concerns, at least from the perspective I see. So That's a positive note,
Yep.
I guess.
Well, I hope we're wrong. I'm just saying if we're not, I'd love for there to be a process for the residents. I'm not talking to me. I'm just talking to Mr. Is it D'Ambrosio and others to be able to have that conversation. All right. Anything else on that at this point?
Just quick question as we bring up the traffic camera, and Dan, you said that's not you. Is that IPD that comes up with that idea? Is that?
Yeah, I think it was Public Works Engineering that had done them previously. IPD may do that. I don't know that they don't, but the ones that I'm familiar with were done by engineering.
Just be good to have something proactive, at least talked about and open.
Okay. Want to just roll into parking real quick? Anybody want to talk about parking? I mean, I don't have a lot on parking. Just, you know, I like the fact that they're proposing more than the minimum, but I'd like to make sure they're thinking about the maximum, because the reality is people are going to drive. There's not a lot of transit.
Have you asked about motorcycle parking yet?
I don't need to. It's built in, right?
Thank you, Tim. Dan Dawson can speak to this if you have more questions, but, I think they've indicated that even though they're kind of hitting the midpoint at the end of build-out, they may be closer to a maximum in early phases.
That's why I'm not really concerned. I think people are really thinking through that, and, as long as the impact to the neighborhood isn't negative, and, you don't end up with a bunch of empty spaces just because we need spaces or think we need spaces.
Keep in mind, too, that because we're including a freestanding parking garage, we can add floors. We have a fair amount of flexibility in what we can do with our parking. So it's going to be a dynamic forecast as we move along.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. And I'm glad you're building that structured parking garage. I think that's terrific. And underground parking, yeah. Anything else on parking?
Just mention that, we keep talking about the impact on the neighborhoods, and that's why I went to walk there the other day. This whole street, College Street, there's really no neighborhood there. It's a lane, it's an avenue that just goes down. There's no in and out of that whole neighborhood there. So if people park on that street, it's only could hamper traffic, I guess.
Is there parking on College Drive?
There.
No parking on College Drive.
So there really is a possible impact on the neighborhood that I could see.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey, Dan, you can give me a thumbs up, thumbs down. Do you guys consider snow emergencies when you're doing? I was just looking and going, we've got two 15% grades there. Okay.
So speaking of transit, I don't know if any discussions have happened around this, but it would be interesting to see if there's an opportunity to put either, I don't know what they call them, the bicycle rentals where you can put your credit card in, and shared bicycle that they have all over Europe, and
I was thinking that earlier.
at the park and ride.
Bike share.
Yeah, like a ride share for bicycles.
Yeah, it's called bike share.
Bike share. Yeah, at the park and ride. I mean, that might be an interesting thing to look at, as well as zip car or car to go. Maybe you have some vehicles that literally go between the park and ride and the college, and you have a couple of designated spaces for that sort of thing. There might be an opportunity there to encourage people to go back and forth from a couple of different areas, perhaps. And I think Swedish ought to be thinking about that too. Sort of in the grander scheme of things, we could place them all over, different parts of the highlands and just have people use them within. Might be an interesting way to look at it.
And a new opportunity.
What's that?
A new opportunity.
Yeah.
And a gondola.
And a gondola. Let's see.
Or a funicular. I'll take either one.
Anything else on transit? I have a couple other quick things to talk about. No? Okay. So I have a question on the agreement. Agreement goes to 2040, if I recall, that I saw in the video.
Only for the college.
For the college, right. So I'm just curious if the construction is potentially going to go 20 to 30 years to build out. That's a 26-year, that's a 26-year time frame between now and 2040. Did I get that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what happens after 26 years if they're not done with build out?
They'd have to talk to the council.
Talk to who?
Council.
The council. Okay. So NINA.
Yeah, I know. I'll still be there in 26 years.
All right. And then, so I asked this question on another project. I think it was Swedish, or maybe it was even Rowley, or both. But if you're going to be building over 20 to 30 years, the impact of the construction vehicles and crews on the surrounding neighborhoods in particular. So I'm thinking here, Mr. D'Ambrosio and his neighbors, if we've got vehicles going in and out on College Drive, on Falls Drive, and so forth for 25 years, 20 years even, heavy equipment, heavy construction equipment, even for the people on the campus, how is that going to impact sort of everybody around, and how are you going to manage that? I know it's sort of an open-ended big question, but I am concerned about that. We've lived here for, 15 years now with constant construction around us, and it's been fairly well managed in that it can be compartmentalized, if you will, and not impact the major roadways at all times, but I see this as a major impact continuously for a long period of time.
Well, I think this is mainly Dan's to answer. I mean, there may potentially be.
You mean Dan D or Dan E?
You, Dan. Dandy Dan. You know, I don't think that they're going to be continuous construction. So I guess that's the good news.
Yeah,
I don't think it's 26 years. We're facing 26 years of construction.
Yeah, I just don't know, right?
No, there won't be 26 continuous years. But, you know, when particularly for phase one, there'll be more grading in phase one. This is my sense, than in any other phase, because if phase one includes 2 buildings, it's likely that the entire loop road will be constructed. There may be some balance issues in terms of earthwork, cut and fill, where we may want to clear a little bit more than we ordinarily would to be able to plan for future balance. So, but generally, this project will haul dirt away. We won't haul dirt in. And so there's going to be truck traffic hauling dirt. You know, that conceivably could be the biggest impact of construction. You know, I'm not going to soft sell that. It's going to be construction trucks on city streets. And, you know, I think that I suppose there may be some opportunities to manage when that traffic goes. But, you know, if we try to manage it too much, we're going to have to pay a real premium to use that equipment then. So it needs to be a balance between how much benefit we can provide and how much, you know, we can afford to provide.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but I also think that the residents who have purchased homes are going to be paying a premium in inconvenience and dirty roads and safety and all that other stuff during those times. So I don't know what provisions are in place to either restrict time, number of trips, which roads are being used, that sort of thing. Because when we were building a lot of the Highlands, there was a lot of stuff that had to go at certain times and definitely on certain roads. And in the early days, going up the gravel pit area, right? So, you know.
I think, you know, we haven't identified all the construction conditions, and at the point we understand the amount that is being hauled, we may put those kinds of conditions. I mean, you know, not that it necessarily worked out perfectly, but with Regency, I mean, there were conditions on the roads they could use, the roads they could close.
Right.
So, you know, it's not that we don't have the ability to look at what we think the construction impacts are going to be and try and create a tolerable balance between people who live there and the work that they're trying to get done.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because there is precedent set, and given the unique nature of this being tucked in between a park and homes and no really good commercial access to it outside of that, I really think that needs to be considered strongly, as well as communicated to the neighbors.
Yes.
So some sort of I don't know if it's a PR plan or communications plan or something, so that people will know when they're going to be impacted, how they're going to be impacted, and what kind of recourse they might have if there are things like, you know, dirt falling off of trucks and impacting vehicles or parks or sidewalks or whatever it is, right?
Well, you know, one thing that would be required is that we'd have to keep the streets clean. I've seen projects where they didn't, and it's a real mess. But I think that my experience is that when you're causing construction impacts to neighborhoods, if you communicate with them and let them know what's going on, that's how schedule's going, are you ahead of schedule, behind schedule, when are important events going to occur, and do it on a regular basis. That pays huge dividends in terms of the relationship between the neighbors and the construction.
That's exactly what I was talking about. So as long as that's being considered and there's a communication path, both directions, I think that's a start at least.
There will be.
Okay, thanks. Any comments on that, folks? No? Okay. Let's see. I think the last question, I have two more questions. So just so that I'm clear, we talked about the intention of clearing the property and having a whole bunch of the site not being touched, but they have the opportunity to clear the entire thing with the exception of certain protected areas, I guess, correct?
There are no protected areas
Okay,
right now.
so they could clear that entire Bellevue College site. So we've run into this before where we're potentially going to approve this SDP based on what's in front of us, and whether we think that's a good idea or not a good idea or whatever. But then, 2 years down the road, they say, well, we want to clear everything, and we really might have liked the fact that they were keeping 46% of the land, untouched. Where does that leave us? I'm not sure I'd feel really good about my approval at that point. I know that legally they're entitled to do that, but it's hard to make a decision on that sort of big a change.
Didn't we add some comments? I think Chantal asked if you clear it all, that they have to do something to keep it. They can't just scrape it bare and leave it, that if they leave a part. Yeah.
Right.
Is that what you're referring to?
No, I'm referring to the fact that, right now we're talking, what's the percentage that we're planning on keeping untouched, basically? Was it in the 30s or 40% of the land? Yeah. So, but if it becomes 10%, then all of a sudden this feels like a very different project, because maybe some of us really like the idea that 40% of the land is preserved. And so is my approval based on what I'm seeing in front of me and what we've been talking about, what we think is going to happen, knowing that there could be some changes, or a massive drastic change that I have no control over whatsoever?
So part of the importance of having these conversations is understanding the points that are sensitive to the commission. So now we've identified that as a sensitive issue.
For me, I don't know if it is for you guys or not.
Well, no, I think that's why Chantal brought it up as well.
Well, I think it's what's being projected, so that's what our expectations would be, and if it drastically changes, then we would feel foolhardy that we, didn't see that coming.
Well, but let's discuss this for a minute, because it's, what we're trying to do is understand what parts are sensitive and what the issue is. So, you find it appealing that they are retaining certain portions of the site with its native character. And they have the right to clear 100% of their property. So if they proposed clearing 100% and replanting that 30% in native vegetation, would that be different?
No, not necessarily, but they're not required to replant, right? They could just clear it and do.
Well,
No.
but I guess what I would say is the way they've shown it is as a native character.
Mm-hmm.
So if they said, we're going to clear the whole thing and then we're going to replant that with all native
Yeah,
plants.
I'm not concerned about that. I would be more concerned if they were to say, we decided to clear it all and do something else with it, right?
So
Because they'd have that
if
right.
we hadn't had this discussion, if they came to us and said, we want to clear the whole site, I think what we would have to sit down and say is, what are you doing afterwards, and are we maintaining the spirit, character, use, intent? So if they came back and said, we're going to replant this completely native, but we're going, we want to set it up so that it's maybe more appropriate for certain kind of environmental studies that we want to do. So we're going to plant it differently than a truly native forest, but it will have that character. We might say that's fine.
Yeah.
If they came back and said, we're going to put a sports court down there, or it's going to be a cricket pitch.
Yeah.
It's not flat enough for that, but something like that, then I think we would be back here before you
Okay.
guys.
That's
Because
what
all
I'm-
of a sudden, it's not going to end up with
Yeah.
the character that we understood.
Well, that's what I'm asking, because that occurred to me as we were talking about accessory uses. They might decide we're going to put a gymnasium down there. We're not adding the square footage there to the maximum, and that could happen, right? And so that's all I'm asking, is just to make sure that I'm not blindsided down the road because. And someone will say, well, hey, they always had the right to do that. Well, yeah, but I'm looking at something that I have somewhat of an expectation to be close to that.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
And I agree with that.
Yeah, I would like to add, though, that, yes, I would definitely be much more comfortable if it was replanted in native vegetation, as is the intent. And I'm looking at this, and I see dense forest written all over the place in that area. So that's definitely created the expectation that it was going to stay there. But I have worked in ecological restoration, and you don't restore the same quality to a forest, artificially than it had in the start. It takes, years and years. This is not an old-growth forest, but it is a second, third growth.
Mm-hmm.
So it has high-quality soil. It has a lot of diversity in it that would take a lot of work. And most ecological restoration is a very quick job of not very respectful of the actual quality of the forest. So I would, if there is any chance of keeping it, it would certainly make sense to keep what's there rather than trying to recreate what's there.
Right, and I'm not committing that if they wanted to scrape it and replant it, I would say that was the same.
Right.
But I do think that if they're maintaining the character, so that's
And the
where
spirit.
and that's where
Yeah.
having the record is important.
Right.
Then we would have to have a conversation, is that being changed?
Yeah.
Or is it being maintained?
Great.
And is this major or minor? Because that really is the expectation, is if they are changing the character, use, and intent, we need to come back and have a conversation with the commission.
Thanks. I appreciate that because, I recognize that there's going to be, I'm flexible. I recognize there's going to be something, could be even quite different than what we see exactly here. And we've dealt with this for many years, and I'm cool with that. I just wanted to make sure, because what I heard on both the video and then earlier tonight was, this is what they're bringing to us, but they have the right to do something totally different. And I just want to make sure that the process is in place for us to identify and deal with that.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Then my last question is going to be a lot easier for you guys, I promise. Will there be opportunities for the community to use space, the meeting space, et cetera? Maybe a church wants to do a service there on the weekends, or there's a regular club or that sort of thing. Will that sort of stuff be available to the community?
I hope so. There is something I need to clarify, though, because a lot of times people in the community say, well, a community college, which is really what we still are, is ours. Right? So we want to have a ice cream social on a Sunday afternoon. The state law doesn't allow us to give that away. So it would be available, and we are allowed to co-sponsor if something matches our mission, and we could forego the rent but pay for the custodial service, things like that. So often we kind of see a conflict of expectations in the community around that. We want to do a lot of outreach. We want to integrate with the community so that you talked about folks walking up the street. We'd like them to feel comfortable walking along the pedestrian spine of our campus, grabbing a cup of coffee, sitting there reading a book, that sort of thing. And of course, amenities that are available, you mentioned the theater productions, things like that. Without the community engagement, those really fall kind of flat for our students too. So that benefits us.
So will you be renting out facilities just to the general public or no?
Absolutely.
You will, okay.
Yeah, in fact, that's a significant part of our revenue streams
Okay.
that kind of keeps everything going.
Great, thank
Yeah.
you. Sorry, folks, that was the last of my questions. Anything else from the commission before we move to the next phase, which would be a potential, well, not a potential, a vote? Nothing? Okay. Do we have any specific adjustments on the motion? Look at that. Oh, I do want to bring up what Michael put in here just to make sure I'm covering it. I also would like to note that during our presentation, it was stated that students are already trying to avoid the fee at the campus by parking. Okay, we talked about this. I think we're covered, right? I feel like we covered it, so, thanks. Okay, is there somebody here that would like to read the draft motion?
So it probably, let me just do this, Jeff, real quick, so to make sure everyone can see what the edit is, that it meets
Oh, okay.
your expectations.
And just as she's doing that, just a reminder, we are going to be voting here. There are 5 regular members and 2 alternates. Is that the sorry, 4 regular members?
Sure, I can get this on.
Does that give us the quorum?
Sorry, this is usually on. Let's see.
You have everything with
Two, three,
the
four.
button here.
Okay, we won't do it that way.
Lucy, do we have a quorum with 4 regulars and 3 alternates? Okay,
Yeah, we're just required to have 4 regulars.
okay.
So, so what I did was on condition number 28, I don't know if you can imagine it. It was the one that, let me do this. So what I did was, right where it said amphitheater, it said the proposed trail between the, and I added Lower Loop Road, which would be this, / amphitheater and the King County Trail, just to be clear that it didn't just stop where the amphitheater would be.
Thank you. Especially if there was no amphitheater.
Document camera.
Okay, thanks. All right, who would like their 15 seconds of fame?
No. No, it's not going to work.
I move that the Urban Village Development Commission approve the Bellevue College Site Development Permit, file number STP 13-00004, as described and evaluated in the staff report dated January 15, 2014, its attachments A through F, the drawings dated August 6 and December 4, 2013, staff's briefing response memo dated January 29, 2014, and subject to the terms, conditions, and rationale contained in the staff report and from the staff memo, revised conditions number 6, 7, 15, new conditions number 28, 29, and as amended this evening. Editing number 28, the proposed trail between the Lower Loop Road, Amphitheater, and I move that the Urban Village Development Commission direct the Development Services Department to prepare findings of fact and conclusions for review and approval by the Urban Village Development Commission chairperson, affirming the Urban Village Development Commission's decision to approve the site development permit application for WashDOT TDR Bellevue College, file number STP 13-00004, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report, as well as those modified and added in the staff's briefing response memo, and as amended, added this evening.
Thank you. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Again, forgive me, but I did not ask if there was any additional comment or rebuttal from staff or the applicant before we go to a vote. Sorry. I don't usually get that because it's late. I'm on mic now. So I didn't offer for staff rebuttal or final comment or from the applicant. I want to do that before we go to a vote. Any comments? Okay, so we have a motion by Carl, seconded by Eric. Let's take a vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? None? Passes unanimously. All right, thank you, Commission. Thank you to all the parties involved for all the work that you've done. We are excited to see Bellevue.
Can I just make a quick comment?
Yep. Go ahead.
I did vote yes, but I do like the plan as it is, but I am very concerned about traffic and the car dependency that this creates, and I do want to repeat that because and I understand that it's not part of what we are approving right now, but it is very close to my heart, and I'm very, very concerned about bringing, 16-year-olds in the middle of those residential areas. So,
Thank you.
I did want to repeat that.
No, that's right, because I was actually just saying basically the same thing, that appreciate the work that everybody's done and that you've heard our concerns. We will be keeping an eye on this. I believe this will be a gem in the community, but there are very serious concerns that need to be addressed on a regular basis, and so this is not the end of the process, as you well know. This is very much the beginning, and we'll be here. At least I will be here probably a long time keeping an eye on this, so thanks.
Jeff, I'm going to add that you're looking at the applicant. I'm looking at the city
It's
as
both.
well.
Well, I'm looking at Dan, I'm looking at Jerry, looking at Mike, right? Right?
And Jennifer.
Hi. So, yeah, and, the residents, I expect them to speak up as well. So, thank you. Okay, so that's it for that item. Other business announcements for you?
So, we have two things coming up later. We'll probably have a meeting or two off. Sometime in March, likely, we will have a preliminary plat for the last parcels of Talus, 7, 8, and 9, which are up near the reservoir. We've been having pre-app meetings with them, and we expect a submittal in the next couple of weeks. And then we are also beginning to work with Polygon on their development agreement, so that will come to you. And then potentially a plat for the residential portion of that. I mean, I've heard that they would like to try and do that this year.
Okay.
And then Swedish is working on their master plan, so that may be coming to you in the fall. That's so preliminary, we don't really know what the timing is, but those are the permits that I'm aware of for this year.
Right, thank you. So my notes say that there's no meeting on February 18th. The next one is currently scheduled for March 4th, and then we'll get some updates on that.
Yes, we'll let you know whether that's happening or it's the second meeting in March, something like that.
Okay, any other comments or new business from anybody? Yes, Scott.
So I wanted to say I appreciate the call out for Pad 4. So that sounds like a great opportunity. Is there any indication in regards to possible timeline in regards to when something may happen with that space?
I have not heard from the Parks Department, but I think when we begin to meet with Bellevue College to talk about that, that's certainly going to come up.
Okay, fantastic.
So I don't have any immediate updates.
Okay, perfect. And then we can save this maybe for the next meeting, but general housekeeping. I know at one point we had chatted about our general observations within the community and communicating items to the city for awareness. Is that something that's still an agenda item, or how do we want to approach that?
We can certainly make it an agenda item if you want to. Would it be Kathleen that we send agenda item suggestions to, or to you?
Right. You know what might be helpful is just send me an email about it, and I can figure out if it would be a good discussion topic, or if I should just direct you directly to a staff person.
Okay.
That way.
Or inviting the right people here if that's necessary.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Thanks, everybody. Meeting adjourned at 9:37.
City of 12 Supply.
You got it.